Hey everybody, it's Marksman here, and today I'm going to show you how I made my track Crepuscular, coming out on Friday the 2nd of December via Teeth Blind Records. It's a really cool track, and I can't wait to show you. So let's jump into Ableton. Okay, here we are in Ableton, so let's jump into the project. This is an interesting one because I actually used far less elements and sounds in this one than my usual style. And the way I sort of kept the sounds super interesting and dynamic and evolving was through tons and tons of automation. And the key to, well, keeping anything interesting over the course of your arrangements is using automation. Even if you have more complex projects, automation is your friend, but especially if you're using fewer sounds, you need to keep them dynamic and evolving. So as you can see here, I'm just activating all the automation lanes so you can see what I've been up to, and you'll notice straight away there's quite a lot of stuff going on in pretty much everything. So let me just open up all of these for you just so you can see, like on this pad particularly, I've gone absolutely in on automation because it's playing pretty much for the entirety of the track. So as such, it needs to be interesting for the entire track, and that is achieved through automation. So anyway, let's dive into things. Let's just have a listen to the full track so you get the idea of what it sounds like. For the purposes of this, I've turned off the mastering chain, so it will sound a little bit more polished in the full version, but this is what it sounds like. Pretty cool. It's got that sort of dark, mysterious, but also kind of chill vibe to it. Quite an interesting tune. So let's jump into things straight away. So of course, let's start with the drums. The kick, obviously, super deep and punchy, and then the rest of the drums. Nothing too crazy going on here, to be perfectly honest with you. Let's just listen to the drum groove. So we've got this. It's kind of like perk loop. This top loop. My own programmed hats, and my snare layered in as well. It's not like a crazy drum track. I have done crazier things in the past, but yeah, it's just simple and does the job. And I've processed the groove bus separately to the kick. What we have here is some compression to bring it tight all together, a little bit of distortion to distort all of them together so that it sounds cohesive, some simple EQ, some tightening, adding some white noise and a little bit of space and reverb. That's about it, and it's also side-chained to the kick. On the drum bus itself, there's an extra rack here, which is basically just compressing it a ton. The key to sick, punchy drums is compression, a little bit of harmonics added in so they have a higher perceived loudness, and a bit of EQ just to like help them pop through. So this is what they all sound like together. Nothing too crazy. Let's talk about the bass. So the bass is a really nice element here. So let's just listen to it in solo. It's very deep and warm. Let's add the kick. You notice that I've done some automation here as well on all sorts of stuff just before the drop section. So I'm opening up the filter, I'm adding in more sort of redux, some more noise, sort of changing the timbre slightly, and messing with the cutoff. So it's getting wider and wider. Then back to being sort of deep and closed off with the filter. And I've done this sort of over the course of the track just to keep it a little bit more movement. I think that this was quite an old version of the MIDI. I couldn't find the final polished version because I exported it to audio. So yeah, you get an idea of what's going on here, but it's not the full completed one. I then also layered this with a long sustained bass. So this sound here. So with the add a little bit more information in the low end. It's quite cool. Like intense and gritty, very MIDI. It doesn't sound great in isolation, but That's a pro tip. It doesn't have to sound good in isolation. It has to sound good in context. So when I was making this, I made it in context with the bass and kick. So I was like, does that sound good together? Yes, it does. So that's all that matters. And I guess something interesting that's going on here as well is I'm sidechaining the long bass using multiband sidechain compression to the main sort of rolling bass, which is on 16th notes. So the sub band of this main bass doesn't get cluttered up by the sub band of the longer bass. So this bass will be more prominent in that area. And I've also rolled off some of the lows here as well, just in case, but that's a good trick to do. So yeah, let's listen to everything in context again. This is like the rhythm section. Pretty cool. And let's talk about this arp here. So it's just like a sort of simple motif. Nothing too crazy going on, but I've added in automation here. So what I'm doing is I'm playing with the cutoff of the synth. It's just a simple wavetable patch. Again, I don't think this was the final version that I exported to audio, so there was more automation in the final song, but couldn't find the MIDI version. So yeah, what we're doing here is we're like opening up the filter, we're adding more noise, more delay. So it's getting like sort of longer and more open. It's going to sort of close up and tighten up here. Pretty cool. And then similarly here, I did that with a decay. So the sound's getting longer and longer. Just for a breakdown. So the key to having great arrangements is using automation. So here I'm sort of building up to this mini break here, adding tension by increasing the decay, the filter, so it starts off quite short and snappy. So it starts like down here, it starts off short and snappy. And over 32 bars, it's gotten really wide over here. A lot of tension. Just before this drop comes in. So yeah, the key is automation. This is the main pad here. So this one I had done a ton of automation, as you can see here. I was like doing this in manually by hand. And it starts off like quite deep and dark. So here. But if we skip to over here, sounds completely different because I've been playing with the cutoff, the timbre, the decay, saturate, delay, and reverb on this wavetable patch. So it really changes throughout the entirety of the track, even though it's playing the same thing over and over again. And this is another really important thing to stress, is that if something is playing continuously throughout the whole track, you need to make sure it's constantly evolving somehow. Like, it can be subtle, it can be really extreme in some parts, but like if we just contrast this part to this part, completely different. To here, very different to here. A lot more delay. It's getting darker. So you see it is constantly changing throughout the whole track, and if you're doing this on every single one of your sounds, they won't get boring. If you're just playing the same thing over and over again, it doesn't matter how awesome it was the first time, it will get very boring very quickly. So this is something that you need to do. And as a god tier level of what you can do here is, if you've even got simple sound, like simple programming, then of course you need to do this. But if you have interesting melodies in of themselves, or interesting programming in of itself, and you do automation, then your productions sound absolutely unbelievable. Like, they sound so professional, and people will listen to it over and over again. If you need more help with this, drop a comment below. Let's talk about this stutter pad here. So this is an example of having an interesting programming or an interesting melody. So this is the sound. It's like a stuttery, Afterlife-y kind of vibe. Like super ethereal and interesting. but it's playing like a harmony of this chord pattern here, but I believe it's a 32 bar loop. So for 32 bars, it's playing slightly different notes and harmonies, which is interesting in and of itself, but the sound is also evolving. Again, unfortunately, I couldn't find the MIDI version with all the automation. I exported to audio, but over the course of the track, it does change. There's a lot of modulation, all sorts of stuff going on. So with that pad here, this main one here kind of fills out the low mids, whereas this one's covering the high end for the majority. Cool, moving on. So let's talk about these ARPs here. So they're not really ARPs, they're both the same patch, and I actually used it again in the lead sound as well, as part of the lead sound. But this one is just like a chord ARP here, so it plays through the whole song. Just to let people know that it's in G minor, basically, but it's like quite in the background, if you listen in context. Sparser areas, you can hear it a lot better. It's just a really nice, dreamy, square harp sound, and it's actually a Ableton stock sound, believe it or not. Ableton's got some really good stock stuff, if you know how to use it. So, on that note, you don't have to go out and buy super expensive stuff. You can just use all of the cool Ableton stuff. But yeah, the same sound again here. It's just playing this little, like, riff or motif in a slightly higher register, so with this. And then if you had this other ARP in as well. There's a lot of like polyrhythms going on. And I think this one's playing on the root note and the fifth. This one is playing the chord, and this one is playing a couple more notes, I think. That's just it. That's just a G triad, and then that's the G, and then we've got the ninth in there for an extra bit of variety. Pretty cool. Nothing too like overcomplicated. This was quite a simple track. I think it's simple, but just done effectively, which is the key if you want a really good song. Now let's talk about the lead. So the lead has two components. As I mentioned, it's the square harp, where I've actually managed to find the MIDI. It is literally just an Ableton stock synth called Tension. They have some really good, like, plucky sounds. So this is the pluck component. And then we've got the lead component, which is a bit more like an intense lead, and together it sounds like this. So the square harp sound, that gives a nice sort of bit of attack to help it punch through, and the more synthy sound helps it like sort of fill out the space and the tails, which is really cool. But yeah, this patch here is really cool, and as I said, I used it on these ARP things here, so the chord ARP and the little motif as well. But I played with some of the parameters on here. I played with the protrusion and the stiffness. That sounds really dirty. This was a filthy song. I do love playing with stiffness and protrusion. Kind of like how aggressive the sound will be. So let's have a listen if we play this. So it's kind of like volume in a way and stiffness. Yeah, that's pretty intense. So yeah, I just had it kind of there. You can do all sorts of stuff with this. It's really cool. But yeah, together it sounds like this. And then on the synth sound, I messed with this timbre. And I'm going to play with it so you can see what it sounds like. So this is 0%. So quite like dark and not much clarity. And then with max, 69% timbre. Oh god, this is filthy. So that's like really sort of bright and clear. And then I just basically messed around with this as it plays. As you can see, it's like just kind of random, really. I think I was just doing it by hand. So yeah, the timbre is just changing consistently. Just to like emphasize different notes. So that one's way more intense than this phrase here. But the pluck in the background is quite constant, so that like gives it some consistency, which will help in the mix. So like it's not just kind of all over the place. It will sound different, but it will still fit together within the song. That's about it for most of it. Let's talk about the effects real quick. So nothing too spectacular going on here, just a reverse crash, like classic. Use it in every track for the drops and transitions. With a little bit of panning automation. And these sounds are really cool. They're basically resampled effects that I've made from every single melodic element in this track, obviously except the drums. And what I do is I run the sound through a reverb, a delay, a grain delay or some sort of granular effect, and some other like, strange resonant sounds, and then reverse them. So let's take a listen to this bass. These bass ones sound amazing, so they're quite long, so I'll just play it from here. That's super dark and mysterious. Let's have a listen to the stutter pad one. So really cool. And it's like this like helps the transitions, but also I place them every 8 bars, at the end of every 8 bars, so that it just is constantly evolving, and there's like a different sound each time. Like every one of these is unique, and when I play the same one, they're in completely different orders. It's not like I just go this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one, this one, this one, this one again. They're like completely random, and sometimes I pitch them up an octave or something like that. So they're always different and at different times. Yeah, it's a really cool trick to do, and the reason why they sound really good in context of the song is because they came from the elements that I made them, rather than just dropping in a random effect sample, which was made from a completely different source. This was made from sources in this track, so that's why they fit together really well. But yeah, it's overall, it's nothing super complicated, I would say. It's just simple stuff done well, in my kind of biased opinion. So yeah, that just about does it. I hope you enjoyed that breakdown. I want to stress that simple things done effectively give you much better results, and I think that project proves that. So if you want to see more track breakdowns, then I've got a lot of them coming. However, most of them are going to be exclusive to my music production program called Building Melodic House and Techno Tracks from Scratch, where I will show my students how to produce professional sounding melodic house and techno tracks from scratch in Ableton quicker, more efficiently, and easier than probably what you're able to do right now without structure. I'll be showing my in-depth workflow, which is a step-by-step process, which is how I sit down and produce music. I just follow the steps and the track gets done. If you have trouble getting out of this loop, or arranging your tracks, or getting them sound professional, getting them sound mixed properly and like a decent master, then you could find this program quite useful. There's also going to be multiple track breakdowns, lots of extra goodies in, like a mixing and mastering seminar, and all sorts of amazing stuff. So if that sounds good to you, drop a comment below and we'll send you over more details. If not, we'll see you in the next video. Hope you enjoyed. Check out the tune Crepuscular. You can actually pre-save the track via the link in the description. If you do, it will send you directly to SoundCloud, where you can listen to the full track right now before release day. How cool is that? But yeah, hope you enjoy, and I'll see you in the next video.